While we're standing here, this is very disturbing to me. I mean, I see this dam crumbling. I see it's cracking here. It's pulled away from the wall there. It makes me wonder why there's not more of a public outcry to get rid of this in public safety.
Everybody wants this dam to come out. It's just a question of, the final decision on how to do it at this point.
You were telling me earlier that you have dedicated a good portion of your life to this project, to the elimination of this dam. How long have you been working at it?
It's about 15 years at this point. And I got involved as a volunteer with the Surfrider Foundation and put together a little slideshow that was really just intended to educate people, raise awareness about the dam and the beach erosion problems in Ventura. And it was interesting that beach erosion was really the issue that struck a chord with our political representatives here, was that we were seeing damage along the coast, and the idea that restoring the natural transport of sediment to the beaches would ultimately help with that problem.
This is the largest concrete structure proposed for removal in the United States, perhaps in the world?
There are similar sized dams on the Elwha River in Washington State. I think this one is actually a little bit bigger because it's wider. In that case, Washington rains so much that they're actually planning on notching the dam down there and letting the river flush the sediments through. Those two main ideas for removing dams is notching it and letting the river flush the sediment out, or somehow trying to keep it in place. And there's another dam up on up in Monterey, the San Clemente Dam, and they're looking at trying to keep all the sediment up in the watershed, diverting the river around through a tributary and keeping it in place.
That sounds crazy to me.
There have been, they just came to an agreement, but the big sticking point on that was who was going to be liable for that sediment in the long term. The intent of the feasibility plan with the removal of Matilija was that there would be no long-term liability because you would have short-term sediment stabilization, so you wouldn't have a big problem waiting to happen in the future. You would have a series of smaller, controlled releases of sediment. There's a real liability to trying to keep that stuff up there forever, because when it does go, and it will go, there'll be a problem downstream.
This is an unreinforced concrete structure? It's just the volume of concrete that's holding together?
This is a thin arch concrete dam, and some dams are what they call gravity dams. It's a really big, heavy structure that sits in the river. This is designed to wedge in between the bedrock on both sides, just like you just described. So you can see that it's tied into bedrock on that side and it's tied in on this side. And because it's arched upstream, the harder you push on it, the harder it wedges. So that's the idea behind it. It's about 8 feet thick up here, and it's 35 feet thick at the base. So it tapers up, and then it's arched around like this.
The topography here, obviously they put this dam in where they could butt it up against uplifted ground. That was going to give it the structural strength, apparently. What they didn't count on was the filling of the dam and the reactive minerals or materials that we're going to be constructed with.
The contractor actually cheated. He was supposed to go down to the San Gabriel River to get the cement, the aggregate, and instead went to the Santa Clara River and got it locally. So that was a fatal flaw. It's funny, when they started doing this demonstration project here, they started cutting through it. They tried some expansive grout that they were using to try and pop blocks off, and they weren't popping off. They found that there was some rebar in there. So how much rebar is in here, I'm not sure that anybody really knows.
They built this dam, and they don't have a complete set of records of what they did here.
I'm not sure as-builts were completed.
Wow.
This was done in a real rush, in a real hurry to kind of get it done before, um, probably before somebody objected too much or realized what was going on. It was something that it took a long time to get approval for a local bond fund to pay for it. It was built primarily to help augment the groundwater in Ojai Valley, but it was really sold to the taxpayer as a flood control device. In the early 40s, there was a big flood down in Ventura that flooded the Ventura Avenue before the large Corps of Engineers levee was built. And so they said, well, we can build this dam up here that'll control the floods.
Wasn't that part of the principles behind St. Francis Dam? Ventura County has suffered through already one dam break, the St. Francis, and we don't know how many people died in that because many of them were swept out to sea.
That was an interesting piece of history, and that was a gravity dam. That was basically a huge pile of dirt that once it started to fail, it eroded away quite rapidly.
Like the Baldwin Hills Dam.
Yeah. I think that we're going to be able to work through this, but that's why I think it's important for people to really learn about this project and get a better understanding of what this is all about. It's an incredibly complex process when you start looking at everything that has to happen downstream. There's bridges, there's water supply infrastructure, there's homes in the floodplain, and all of that has to be accounted for with the planning for this.
You've been working on this nonstop then for pretty much 15 years, and you hope it's going to be gone when?
The original plan was 2012, so we've got a couple of years. The current planning is suggesting maybe 2018, but we've got a plan. I think it's time to just get to work.